Today, we're going to map out the surprising story behind personality types. You've seen those letters, right? INTJ, ENFP. Maybe you've even taken a personality test and gotten your own four-letter code. And you probably read the description and thought, yeah, that's totally me. But have you ever stopped to wonder where those four letters actually came from? Well, the story behind them is way more complex and, honestly, way more fascinating than you'd probably guess. Yeah, to really get it, we're going to have to go on a journey. And I'm talking about a full-on 100-year journey right into the mind. This isn't just about a test. It's really a story about this century-long quest to try and map the human psyche. And it all kicks off right at the beginning of the 20th century. Okay, so where do we start? Well, our story really has to begin with one of the most famous and, let's be honest, controversial names in all of psychology, Sigmund Freud. This guy, he completely changed the game. He fundamentally changed how we think about ourselves. You see, before Freud came along, people mostly thought of the mind as this rational, conscious thing. You know, what you see is what you get. But Freud, he had this absolutely revolutionary idea. He said that the most important parts of our personality, the things that really drive us, are actually hidden from us. They're buried deep down in what he called the unconscious. And his favorite way to explain this was with the iceberg metaphor, which is just brilliant, really. It perfectly visualizes his whole idea. Think about it. The part of you that you're aware of every day, your conscious thoughts, that's just the tiny little tip of the iceberg sticking out of the water. But the real action, the massive, hidden, driving force of your personality, that is all happening way down below the surface. And according to Freud, this whole underwater world is basically a constant battleground. It's a three-way tug of war. On one side, you've got the id. This is your primal instinctual side. It just wants what it wants right now. On the other side, you've got the superego. That's your moral conscience, kind of like the little angel on your shoulder telling you what you should do. And then, caught right in the middle, is the ego. That's the conscious you, trying to navigate the real world and somehow keep both of them happy. But as you can imagine, not everyone was on board with Freud's ideas, especially his intense focus on repressed personal conflicts. And that includes his own star student, the guy he handpicked to be his successor, a man named Carl Jung. So, Jung and Freud, they had this huge falling out. It was a big deal. Jung just felt that Freud's whole view was too limited, and frankly, too negative. He thought, is that all the unconscious is? Just a dark cellar full of our personal secrets? Jung believed there was something more, another, much deeper layer, something vast, ancient, and shared by all of us. He gave it a name, the collective unconscious. Now, this is a big idea. Jung's theory was that we are all born with this shared psychological inheritance. It's like a blueprint, and it's filled with what he called archetypes, these universal primordial images. Things like the hero, the mother, or the shadow. These are the characters and themes that pop up in myths, legends, and even our dreams across every single culture throughout all of history. They're just part of being human. Okay, so this is all fascinating, deep, almost mystical stuff, right? The question is, how on earth do you get from that to a practical multiple-choice personality test? Well, this is where our story takes a really interesting turn, and two brilliant women step onto the scene. Right, so Isabel Myers and her mother, Catherine Briggs, were absolutely fascinated by Jung's work. But here's the thing, they weren't academics, they were pioneers. They looked at these big, complex theories and saw a way to make them useful in the real world. This was during World War II, a time when it was crucial for people to find the right job, to find their place in the war effort. So they set out to create a tool, an actual instrument, to help people figure out their own psychological type. And this is what made them so innovative. They didn't just take Jung's work and simplify it. No, they tested it. They took a scientific approach. They realized that, while Jung's descriptions were really profound, when you actually collected data from real people, the traits he talked about didn't always cluster together the way he thought they would. So they used psychometrics, which is basically the science of psychological measurement, to see what actually held up under scrutiny. So here's the crucial point. They used hard evidence to refine Jung's theories. For example, Jung had this idea that extroverts were generally more conventional, but Myers and Briggs' data showed, well, that wasn't always true. Some of the most out-of-the-box abstract thinkers, what we'd now call ENTPs, are classic extroverts. And they made another huge discovery. They found that a person's attitude toward change didn't really have to do with being an introvert or an extrovert. It was actually linked to the other skills. And by doing all this testing and refining, they created the 4 clean dichotomies that we all know today. And that brings us all the way back to today. We've gone from the deep, murky depths of the unconscious mind all the way to those 4 letters you get on a computer screen. So after this incredible 100-year journey, what's the big takeaway? Well, when you lay it all out like this, you can see this clear evolution of an idea. First, Freud kicks open the door to the unconscious mind. He says, hey, there's a whole world down there. Then Jung comes along and expands that world, saying it's not just personal, it's collective. And finally, Myers and Briggs come in and build a bridge from that deep, theoretical world right into our everyday lives, giving us a practical map of the psyche. But here's the most important thing to take away from all of this. These types, they were never ever meant to put you in a box. It's not a life sentence. It's not a definitive label of who you are. Think of it more like a starting point. It's a language, a tool that can help you understand your own natural preferences. And maybe just as importantly, understand how and why other people are different from you. So that's the big question this whole 100-year history leaves us with, isn't it? What is your personality type? Is it a hard scientific label, or is it more like a story that you choose to tell about yourself? You know, it's a journey from the deep, mythic archetypes of Jung to the data-driven science of Myers and Briggs. And maybe, just maybe, the real answer is that it's a little bit of both. It's a story, for sure, but it's one that's grounded in a century of incredible psychological exploration.